condition is 759, so a little bit lower than 760, so air will in. And during the exhalation, we build a little bit 761. But the intrapleural pressure in between this pleural cavity, and so it's intrapleural, so we call PIP, is from -3 to -6. So this one actually is more negative than intra-alveolar pressure, and that one will affect more for the gas to move in and out. Okay. And in the previous, I mentioned that for the heart return to blood return to the heart, we call respiratory pump is because this intrapleural pressure. Okay, maybe I had this slide. Yeah, previous I tell you how we can help the blood from the lower limb to the heart, and one is because we have venous valve, so one direction, and muscle contraction, compression, help them. And then we had a respiratory pump. During the inhalation, we decrease pressure in the pleural cavity, so PIP decrease -3 to -6, and blood will pour into the inferior vena cava, and exhalation will help them to push it into the right atrium. Okay, and here give you a review this one. Inside the alveolar, or we call intrapleural, it is ±1 compared to the atmospheric. And PIP, intrapleural, will be -3 to -6. And when air move in, inhalation it even got lower because it's more negative, and the air from outside will be higher, it will move in. And tidal volume means each inhalation, how many ml of blood will come in from to the nose. Okay, so like a tide over the sea. Okay, so we call tidal volume. Okay, in some textbook, they put it like this cartoon. Okay, outside we call atmospheric pressure, and in the lung here we just use one alveolar to represent all the lung as alveolar pressure, and then the cavity is intrapleural pressure. Okay, and then that's one. Okay, there are more detail if you do the respiratory study. They have a lot of questions for this one. Okay, this one I just mentioned that. Okay, the pressure change is controlled by diaphragm and the muscle. We'll tell you later. Okay, so here is respiratory muscle. Inhalation, we need to have two muscles to work. Diaphragm will move down, account for 75% of the force. And the rib move up, caused by external intercostal muscle. So when air move in, is diaphragm move down, and the rib move up. This one up and this one down, and so the space, the double increase. Okay. Exhalation is just the diaphragm relax, and so it's a relax of diaphragm and the external intercostal muscle. Okay, and so usually we don't resting condition. We don't we don't get involved other muscle. But after contraction, we use the internal intercostal muscle, or transverse thoracic muscle, or abdominal muscle. That means we can use our will to control. We can do that kind of control that will involve the other muscle. Okay, and so we have two terms. quiet breathing we call U. Eupnea. U always means normal condition or resting condition. Okay. False we call hypernia, then controlled by muscle. And so where's the location of the external intercostal muscle? That you can see that outside, in between the rib. Okay. Internal will be a little bit deep there. With the AMP1, you know another muscle, right? And so here they put it here like primary muscle or inhalation. Primary muscle, that means during the resting condition, we involve external intercost, and the other one is diaphragm, very big muscle. Okay. Accessory, that means the force during inhalation or exhalation. Okay. But I will focus for this primary muscle in inhalation. Primary muscle in inhalation, this one. Okay. And you can see this one is when the air move in, the diaphragm is right here, move down, and the rib move up is caused by external intercostal muscle moving up, and exhalation just relax. By the way, when you eat this rib for barbecue, what kind of muscle you're eating? Okay, you eat everything. Okay, you eat everything surrounding the rib. Now, how we measure this air in and out? We call it spirometer. The classic one, the original one, is because we have very difficult. We have two nodes, the hole there, and so we use a mouse to control it. And so we usually during the exercise or exercise they put a clip close to your nose, and everything air coming from your mouth, and they had two containers with one with the water and one is just put upside down, and then they connect to a pan here, and here's a volume that can rotate, and every time you move the air out, the air will flow this one, will put it up, okay, and so that the pan will move up, and when the air in, it will move down, okay, and this one we call it normal resting, and this tidal volume, like a tide here, and we can drop something like that. Resting tidal volume, we call VT or sometimes called TV, okay, about 500 ml. That means each time air 500 in, 500 ml in, 500 ml out, in, out, okay, can last many cycles. But when air already out, we can use our muscle to push it more out, and that volume we call respiratory reserve volume, ERV. Okay, we barely out, then we can push it more out, and then we go back to normal in, normal out, normal in, and air in already in, we can suck in more air until the maximum, and we call this volume respiratory reserve volume. So we do have this reserve, either out or in, okay? And this one is normal tidal volume. And so we can do a test called VC, vital capacity. That means you can take air as much as possible, okay, and then you push it out as much as possible. And then you will get what? You will get the air everything to the top and push it all the way down here. And this volume actually including three parts: IRV plus VT plus ERV, and we call vital capacity. Because we use this volume, we can check how good is your lung function. This one shows more detail. Actually, the same thing. Okay. So a single value we call volume. ERV is a volume, IRV is a volume, TV or VT is a volume. And sometimes we call capacity. Capacity means include at least two volumes. Vital capacity will be a three volume. And if we push all the air out, our lung is not completely collapsed. We still have something, you just cannot push it out. We call residue volume. So our total lung capacity actually equal to VC, vital capacity, plus residue volume, okay? And sometimes we put this everything out, we call functional residue capacity. And sometimes we call inspiratory capacity, and then it's including IRV and VT. And so we have some, beside it, I will go this through and we'll come back, okay? Vital capacity is an indicator for lung function. It's maximum air in and then maximum air out, okay? And so they're including ERV, VT, and IRV, okay? In the main, roughly, our textbook say 4,800 ml. And I figure out right now, the guy, you don't have that much, you probably only 4,300 ml. So that probably the value for people 10 or 20 years ago, they are stronger. Right now, people are just play the computer or the cell phone, so they reduce the vital capacity. And in the female, your age, the textbook put 3,100, but actually not that much, only 2,800. Okay. So that's we see the equation you need to know. And the other one's total lung capacity is TLC. Okay, VC plus RV. Let's go back to this one to show you this one. Okay, yeah. As vital capacity you need to know. Total lung capacity you need to know. That's the most important part. And here I say, that's from our textbook. Show you, okay, male and female vital capacity, roughly value, and they put the value. I just say too high, okay, actually we don't have that much. Now we can calculate how much ml of the air coming to the lung. We have two values. One we call respiratory minute volume. I mean, every minute, how much air come into our nose. Very easy, right? Your breath frequency times each time tidal volume or VT or TV, right? Let's say if every minute you had 12 breaths, and each one 500 ml tidal volume, and you time it 6,000 ml per minute. And very interesting, this value very similar to cardiac output. Every minute we pump out how much blood, roughly is your go back to your equation. Cardiac, I think you still know that cardiac output equal to heart rate times stroke volume, right? Heart rate is a frequency. Stroke volume is a volume, right? Heart rate usually 70. Stroke volume roughly 80 or something. Okay. But this equation is calculate how much air go into your nose. But we had a lot of this nasal cavity, trachea, bronchi, it's not reached to alveoli, not get exactly the volume. So how we do it is VT mean tidal volume every minute, 500 ml, but we have to minus VD, volume of anatomy desk space. That means all the trachea, bronchioles, nasal cavity is about 150. And so that is the more accurate volume reached to the alveoli. You have 12 breaths every minute, and times 350 is only 4,200 reached to the alveoli. Okay. For adult, roughly we have 12 to 18 breaths every minute. Kids can be increased a little bit. Baby maybe up to 20, 24. Okay. All right. So these two equations you need to know that respiratory minimum volume, alveolar ventilation, we call VA, meaning alveolar. Okay. That is reached to our alveolus should be less than respiratory minimum. And VC you have to know vital capacity, and the equation you need to know. Total lung capacity you have to know. And here just show you more detail about this. I already mentioned that. Residue volume is they're always there. You just cannot collect the lung. So this one already here. And then some term we not use that much is inspiratory capacity is IRV plus VT, and functional residue is ERV plus residue. Okay, I mean they divided two parts, in or out. Okay, but we more focus on vital capacity and lung capacity. Can we go back to that? We will show you that FRC means residue volume and ERV, the lower part here. And upper part here is inspiratory capacity as IRV plus VT. Okay, so we can draw a line here. Okay, so we call this two volume. Yeah, this one's up and this one is down. Oh, this one, sorry. This one is on upper two parts and this lower two parts. That's what you mentioned there. Okay. So now we continue to this external respiration. That means the air in and out in the lung. Okay. And internal means that reach to every single cell, every tissue. Okay. And very interesting thing is in the external. It's alveolar and blood capillary. The gas always go from higher pressure to low pressure. In the alveolar, the partial pressure of oxygen will be 100, and when the blood return to this terminal or pulmonary artery, the oxygen down to 40. So 100 greater than 40, so oxygen move up. And CO2. When it reach the terminal is 45, and alveolar only have 40, and so oxygen as CO2 will move up, and then through the heart pump out to the artery and the blood capillary, we call the network, the gas or nutrient exchange. The oxygen from 100 down to about 95, just a little bit lost. CO2 all the same. But in the tissue, the oxygen is down to the 40. And so 95 greater than 40, oxygen move in. In the tissue, CO2 is 45, and blood is 40, and so CO2 move up. Okay, and this exchange we call internal respiration. I will amplify it in lung just the same thing. Alveolar capillary, and 100. This one 40, and this one CO2 40, 45. Roughly this number is very easy to memorize. In tissue, reverse. Okay, any kind of tissue, any cell there, either connective tissue or muscle or articular tissue. Okay, oxygen 95, tissue 40. CO2 just reverse, 45 in the tissue, 40 in the blood. And we had a curve we call hemoglobin oxygen saturation curve. That one, I mean, how much, we had to go back to the basic structure, go here. Every red blood cell, we had hemoglobin, we had minimal hemoglobin. Hemoglobin had 2 alpha, 2 beta units, right? And they have 4 heme group. So I just put something in a simple, here's heme group. And each one will carry oxygen. So each hemoglobin will carry 4 oxygen, okay? And in the lung, it's almost 100% they all carry oxygen. Only very few cases, so it's 99%, 98.5%. And when the blood pumping through L-tap and go to my finger and then go back to the right atrium, and how much they lost, the hemoglobin, they only unload a quarter. When the venous blood coming back, oxygen down to 40, and hemoglobin is 75 saturated. So when it have all the 4 heme carried oxygen, we call 100% saturated. And when it go through one cycle and lost only a quarter, and we call it 75% saturated. So this concept very important for you to know. Okay, so hemoglobin oxygen saturation curve or dissociation curve, it means what? It means in the rest, in the L-tap we have 100% or 98, 99%, okay? And go to the vein, when it return to the heart, it's the pressure down to 40, 100 down to the 40. But it carried 75% saturated and roughly released about 23 or we say 25 CO. So only 1/4 of oxygen is unloaded, sent to the tissue, and the other 3/4 or 75% still keep it, and we call it reserve. Why we keep it? Why we don't just complete send the oxygen to? Important during what? Exercise. We release more so we can run. And the other thing is during the accident, if the lung cannot breathe, okay, if the cardiac pumping stop, and the local blood in the tissue can send out the other oxygen, 75%, and maintain 4 to 5 minutes for the life. Okay, so that makes sense, right? And so that means the red blood cell normally only working 25% efficiency, okay, and 75% is not working. But during exercise, probably they release more, maybe 8, maybe not 25, maybe 30, maybe 40, maybe 50, okay. But during if the heart stop beating and the lung cannot breathe, and they can release all. And so always during the accident, people can survive about 5 minutes. Okay, that's why. Okay. And let's go back to here. you have to always know this term in oxygen in the blood roughly 100. Okay, when it return 40. Okay, all right. So we make a curve starting from the right side. The air coming out from airtight, hemoglobin all saturate, almost 100%. And the same to big artery, small artery, go to the vein. When they return to venue, it's down to what? 40. Okay, and at that time, it's 75% saturated. Okay, so normal cycle, we only go up beginning from 100 and down to the 40. That's it. We don't go further down, and that's during the acid and then they will release more oxygen. Okay. So this curve shows you, and to look at it from the bottom part. Okay. In the saturated part, start from the top, almost 100%, or say 98, and down to 75. That's normally our blood circulation. Okay, and lower than 40 is special case. And now we have two conditions. One is our blood pH value change. Normally it's 7.4. It's our normal average pH value. If we got more acid, could be 7.3, 7.2, and we call acidosis, too much acid. And that curve shift to right. That shift to right, what I mean, I had to draw a line here, like this one. Okay, normally our pH value is this one, 7.4. And if we down to 7.2, that means we have more oxygen, we have more CO2, we have more hydrogen ion. And the pressure still when it go down, go back to the heart, still 40 millimeter mercury. And you draw a line here, I compare these two curves. Okay, in the resting condition is 75 saturated, and in this acid condition is down to 50 something. So that curve shift to right. That means during that hydrogen ion increase, we release more oxygen to the tissue. Hemoglobin holding less, and here's give you the thing you can see. Normally 75% we hold it and release 25 roughly. Okay. If too acid, too much CO2, and then percent of saturated hemoglobin down to 50 something, and we release more. We release 44% to the tissue. I mean, our tissue need oxygen. Opposite, if we had alkaline condition, and then we will hold more, and we release less. Okay, and that is the discovered by Dr. Ball, so we call Ball effect. Okay, and if you cannot remember, just say very boring Ball effect. Okay, when you have more acid, then your tissue need more oxygen. Red blood cell release more oxygen, and the percent of saturated decrease. Second condition would be temperature. 37 degrees C, that's our normal body temperature. They put an extreme case, okay, 43, that will be a high fever, right? It also curve shift to right. And I mean, if we draw a line, if we draw a line here, then that means 37 is 75%, and 40 here, we holding about 60%. So that means two things. sorry, this one. Go back to original. The factor affect hemoglobin is one is the acid or CO2 or pH value decrease. They all mean the same thing. The curve shift to right. That means hemoglobin release more oxygen, holding less. The second thing you think about is increase our body temperature. You just think about fever. When we have fever, our tissue need more oxygen, and so they curve shift to right, and that means more oxygen released to the tissue or cell. That's two major factors. And the third one we call a compound called VPG. Okay, stand for phosphorate glyceride. Okay, when this red blood cell is young because the lifetime 120 days, they produce VPG is higher, and more. Say this one. If we increase the VPG and curve shift to right, and more oxygen release. So when the red blood cell is young, they release more. Okay. Release more means the affinity, the holding decrease the holding oxygen. Very easy. You are young people, you are more generous. You only you like to give money. People getting old, very stingy. Okay, they don't want to give. Okay, so you can see that the cell, when the red blood cells are young, easy to deliver. Okay, and that is the one we just mentioned. That Bohr effect is the one for CO2 or hydrogen ion. And temperature is the other one. If we draw a line here, if the 43 degree, we will release more. We draw a line here, saturate, decrease. Okay. So you have to know this term. Okay, don't worry that. And here is just show you hemoglobin structure for heme group 2 alpha 2 beta union. And synthesize iron ion and then binding with oxygen. Okay. Alright, this one they mentioned, mention. How about the feeder? Yeah. Feeder get the blood from mother and from that placenta is already low. That oxygen is not 100 millimeter mercury. When you get it from umbilical vein, tell you from here. Adult hemoglobin and fetus hemoglobin. For human, we start from 100 down to 40. For fetus, it starts from 40 and down to the 20. Okay, this short short range, because you get it from mother vein, it's already down to the 40, not 100. Okay. And so how the fetus can get enough oxygen. And the reason is they from 40 down to the 20, and the saturation curve is down from 90% down to the 60, go to here. It's 90% here, down to the 60, okay? So how much they release? 30% release. And our adult, we down from 95 or 98 down to the 40, we release 23. So fetus even get more tissue, get 30%, and adult get about 25%. Okay, so they don't have problem to get enough oxygen, and why they can get that oxygen is because the hemoglobin in the fetus different from after birth. Okay, in this one I get it from the other book. Okay, in adult we had 2 alpha 2 beta unit and then 14 group, and in the fetus they have 2 alpha the same, but 2 gamma globin. Okay, and gamma globin had a high affinity to bind. They can from placenta side catch more oxygen, and when they reach to the fetus tissue, and they can release more. Okay, the binding site is a different protein called serine and histidine. Okay, that's more further study. You don't need to worry about that. Just know the fetus hemoglobin is more effective to carry oxygen, and so they don't worry about in the beginning part they only 40 millimeter mercury. Okay. So when we see these two, if, for fetus we start from these two arrows. Okay, and for adult you have to start from 100 and down to the 40. Okay, so that the tiny range from 100 down to the 75. That's for adult, and for fetus from 90 down to the 60. That's the one. Okay. Now how about CO2 transport? CO2 transport is not by hemoglobin, the ion. It has three factors. 70% of them will form this bicarbonate ion, and 23% of them binding to hemoglobin, binding to alpha chain or beta chain, and 7% will directly dissolve in the plasma. Okay, and so take a look at this. That's from old textbook. The same thing. Okay. In the inside, one red blood cell, and outside is plasma. CO2 is 70%, 7% dissolved in the plasma, 90% go in the red blood cell, and 70% would convert to bicarbonate ion, bicarbonate acid, bicarbonate ion, and bicarbonate ion CO3 will come out, and chlorine move in. Okay, and that is the major one. And the other 23% binding to alpha chain, beta chain. And we call this chloride shift. Chlorine move in and bicarbonate ion. They all have this negative charge. And so the CO2 transport is three factors, but we focus on the number 3 here. Is how they carry CO2 go to the red blood cell, binding with water, and we have carbonate anhydrase, called CA. Okay, bicarbonate acid, bicarbonate ion, and hydrogen ion. Hydrogen ion binding to hemoglobin, and bicarbonate ion will move out from red blood cell to plasma, and we call chloride shift. And then they will most of the time locate in the plasma. When they reach to the alveoli, and this bicarbonate ion will enter the red blood cell from the plasma, and chlorine will go up, and then this one will bind with hydrogen ion and reverse the reaction, and then become water and the CO2, and then CO2 can come out. So CO2 is the transport is majorly in the bicarbonate ion type. And here's old book and here's new book, the same thing. Okay, they show you oxygen is very easy, is majorly carried by hemoglobin from alveoli and binding to hemoglobin and delivered to tissue. CO2, different story. CO2 come in and majorly become the acid, and then go out by bicarbonate ion and stay in the plasma and transport to the lung. When they go to the lung, then this bicarbonate ion move in, chloride move out, just reverse, and then become bicarbonate acid and become CO2, and then CO2 go out to the trachea and then go out. Okay, and so CO2 from tissue, and here the majorly goes to this bicarbonate ion. Okay, all right, and so we'll go back to this slide. 1 year, the MCAT question asks, okay, the CO2 transport in our blood is majorly in what? Okay, and they had many choice. Hemoglobin, no. Bicarbonate ion, yes. Bicarbonate ion in red blood cell or bicarbonate ion, CO2 is transported Earth, okay. Bicarbonate ion in plasma. And this is the answer in plasma, okay. Because most of the time, the bicarbonate ion is located in the plasma. They only enter to the red blood cell in the alveolar, close to alveolar, okay. And most of the time, they get it say from my finger, the CO2, and when they return to the lung, they all become bicarbonate ion in the plasma, in the liquid part, and then go back to the lung, and then they will enter red blood cell, and then become this bicarbonate acid, become the CO2. Okay, so that's a little tricky. Okay, CO2 is carried out by bicarbonate ion and transported in the plasma. All right. To control the respiration, we have 3 centers. Normal condition is by brainstem, the medulla oblongata, and the palms. They have 2 nuclei called DRG, VRD, dorsal and the ventral. I'll show you later. And we can control by our higher center we call cerebral cortex, the brain, or hypothalamus, or limbic system, or controlled by chemoreceptor reflex. That means located in the carotid body, alveolar body, and medulla oblongata. They sense the hydrogen ion change. And I put 3 greater than 2 greater than 1. What I mean is 3 is more important than 2, and 2 is more important than 1. What I mean is the final control of respiration is controlled by chemoreceptor reflex. I give you one example. Okay, nobody say, okay, I want to commit suicide. I just hold my breath and I die 5 minutes later. Can you do that? You cannot do that. Okay. Why you cannot do that? Because your chemoreceptor overcome your cerebral cortex, overcome your will. When they build up hydrogen ion or CO2, they force the diaphragm and the external intercostal muscle to contract to get the air in. And that's the mechanism why we can survive during the sleep. Maybe we forget to suck in the air, right? But we never forget it. Only very small case, some accident, okay? We sleep, we don't know anything, but we still get the air in and out. Controlled by chemoreceptor, okay? And high receptor, we can push the air in and out, but we cannot last too long. I can push the air, but I cannot last 1 hour, okay? Because so tired. Normally, the respiratory center in the oblongata medulla, and they call 2 areas. Where's the area? Okay, here it is. Dorsal respiratory group and ventral, and 2 nuclei here. And you know these 2, and that should be okay. This 2, I just amplify that. It should be same thing. Okay. That's dorsal and it's a ventral. Okay. And then they had a control to the diaphragm and external respiratory, external intercostal muscle. And they had a figure here. In a quiet breathing, your sting condition. Inhalation is controlled by DRV. Okay. DRV. In the force, is DRV and plus VRG. Okay, all right. Don't worry about this. Okay, don't worry about this. And so, just make something simple is normal condition only DRG. Okay, and force we will involve VRG. Okay, and so dorsal will control normal condition and a force bracing. And so if you cannot remember, just say D. Okay, D means double. Okay, so either choir or force. VRG only for force. We control by our will. Okay. Don't worry about it. So don't make everybody headache. Okay. During flow reflex. I mean, our mechanism can prevent our over expand our lung or prevent it collapse, either expand or collapse. So that's by these two doctrines. The second law, the first law is the Boyer law, and the second law called Dalton law. That means that atmospheric pressure equal to some major gas. Number one is nitrogen. Number two is oxygen. And the water and CO2, they all very less. This nitrogen and oxygen will control probably 99%. Okay, and roughly nitrogen, just remember 79. Oxygen 21%. Okay, in the atmospheric. And so, if Dalton law and the equation in at sea level is 760, and how much of the pressure is contributed by nitrogen? Okay, times 0.79, 79%, roughly 600 ml. Then is controlled by nitrogen. Oxygen probably 21%, so it roughly 159 or 160. Okay. And the other gas is very less. And so if we move to the higher altitude in the mountain area, atmospheric pressure decrease. And what is the partial pressure for nitrogen and oxygen? Their percentage is always the same. So it's still times 79% and 21% for oxygen. Okay. And so we climb up to the mountain, atmospheric, the oxygen will lower, and so our red blood cell will enlarge, or our red blood cell will increase the hemoglobin to compensate. And it takes about 1 or 2 weeks. So if you climb up to the mountain, you have to stay in the altitude and stay there for a couple of days and then move up a little bit, and then move up a little bit. Okay. Don't just go 1 day there. All right. That's the first law, is Dalton law, and the second law is Henry law, and that talking about if the gas dissolve is the key word, to the liquid. Increase the pressure or increase the gas molecule dissolved in the solution. One example is the soft drink like soda at the can here. And what I mean is, in the manufacturing company, they increase the air and make more the gas dissolve in the liquid. Then number one nitrogen, number two oxygen. And when you open the can, the pressure decrease, and then the gas dissolved there will decrease, so air moving up. And that's the way why you pay money for the soft drink. Why? Because when you drink, let's say you drink a Sprite or Coke, the pressure decrease, and from your stomach, the gas coming out, and carry the flavor and go to your nose or your mouth, and you feel so good. Okay, and you pay money for the bubble to come up. Okay, and that's Henry law. Okay, but actually it's the same thing. It's just a liquid plus some sugar, and the gas is free. Okay, from the air. When they make it in a company, they increase the pressure and force it dissolve more. And when you drink it, coming out, and you drink it in the stomach, and then coming out from your esophagus, coming out of your nose, and you feel good about it. Okay, and that's the way. Okay, as Henry law, and this law also applies to human. If someone suddenly the atmospheric pressure decrease, yeah, and then nitrogen will come out and accumulate in the joint, and we call diverse disease. And what they mean, I will draw something for you. Let's say this one is a mountain. Okay. This one is sea level. Okay. And pressure here, sea level is low. When someone died here, the guy died here. Okay. That pressure will increase the pressure. This one is low in the atmosphere. Okay. And then if this guy had this a shark, any kind of animal attack this guy, okay, and it will go up quickly to the sea level area in here, okay. Then what happened? Pressure decrease, pressure increase in the plasma or joint. We had a lot of liquid, right, and the fluid there, and the bubble nitrogen or oxygen will dissolve in the fluid, in the plasma. When it quickly go out, and the bubble comes out, right, from the fluid, just like you drink a Coke, and the gas coming out. And so the bubble had no way to go out from the nose. So the joint pain, all the joint pain, and blood vessel pain, anything you have fluid there, like between the heart had two membrane and they have bubble there. Between the lung had two membrane, they all have bubble there. When you had an increased pressure, and so to prevent this diverse disease, the guy should be move up, slowly move up. Okay, and then that is bubble to comes out, and so we call this decompression sickness or diverse disease. Okay, it could be also in the CSF, cerebral spinal fluid. Okay, in the spinal. So the whole body pain. Okay, is kind of severe pain. So if someone you like to go to the ocean and this diving kind of training, you have to know this. Okay, and that's applied for Henry's law. Okay, Henry law. And if I ask you, okay, this diverse disease, the majorly caused problem is by what gas? Okay, nitrogen, because it's 79%. Okay, the bulk is nitrogen bulk. Just like you drink the Coke, the air coming out, and the gas, number one is nitrogen. Okay. Some term called the pressure mercury called this not important. About PSI, some England country use this one. Okay, that means pounds per square inch, roughly equal to 50.7 millimercury. Two terms, hypercapnia, that means increased CO2 in the blood, in the artery, and caused by hyperventilation. I mean, if some people get damage to the rib or something, then the CO2 cannot move out, and CO2 accumulate in the blood, and so we call hyper. Capnia means CO2, and that means their respiratory rate, the function is lower, and our body response is increase this frequency, hyperventilation, and get rid of the CO2. We increase the breath rate. Okay, so beginning from hyperventilation, any damage to the chest, and cause hypercapnia, and then we compensate with the hyperventilation, increase the rate, and we go back to normal. And the other case is opposite, hypocapnia, decreased CO2 in the artery. Usually a very rare case. It only caused by hyperventilation. If I do it by my way there, I do this, okay, for let's say for 1 minute, my CO2 will decrease. But I cannot last very long because my body reflex will then mean hyperventilation decrease my breath rate, and then back to the normal. Okay. One example is if someone is crying, okay, and what happened? Usually cause hyperventilation. Okay. Crying, you increase it, but you cannot last too long. You should slow down. Okay. So in some extreme cases, if one guy, okay, just lost, is just down by a girlfriend, okay, and the guy is crying, okay, what you can do? Let him cry, because it's good. Hyperventilation will decrease CO2, get rid of CO2, and just a couple of minutes, he will come back to normal because they will decrease very late. Okay, so if someone cry, okay, that person crying, no problem, it will recover. Okay, all right. We take the other break. Okay, then we come back.